Good afternoon, everyone. We're extremely pleased to welcome you all to a brand new episode of TES Reading Club. After reading many wonderful plays, poems, and half of an epic, Paradise Lost, we are present today with something exciting. TES Reading Club members are all ready to read out excerpts from one of the best novels ever, which has so many touching excerpts. And if you have guessed it already, congratulations! It's Wuthering Heights. So, to clarify, we will be reading out excerpts and not the whole novel, and we'll also try to present our own views on the excerpts we are reading. Without any delay, let's start.
This time I remembered I was lying in the oak closet and I heard distinctly the gusty wind and the driving of the snow. I heard also the fir bough repeat its teasing sound and ascribe it to the right cause. But it annoyed me so much that I resolved to silence it, if possible, and I thought I rose and endeavored to unhasp the casement. The hook was soldered into the staple, a circumstance observed by me when I was awake, but forgotten. I must stop it. Nevertheless, I muttered, knocking my knuckles through the glass and stretching an arm out to seize the importunate branch, instead of which my fingers closed on fingers of a little ice cold hand. The intense horror of nightmare came over me. I tried to draw back my arm, but the hand clung to it, and a most melancholy voice sobbed, "Let me in! Let me in! Who are you?" I asked, struggling meanwhile to disengage myself. "Catherine Linton," it replied, shiveringly. Why did I think of Linton? I had read Earnshaw 20 times for Linton. I'm come home. I lost my way on the moors, as it spoke. I discerned, obscurely, a child's face looking through the window. Terror made me cruel, and finding it useless to attempt shaking the creature off, I pulled its wrist onto the broken pane and rubbed it to and fro till the blood ran and soaked the bedclothes. Still it wailed, "Let me in," and maintained its tenacious gripe, almost maddening me with fear. "How can I?" I said at length. "Let me go if you want me to let you in." The fingers relaxed. I snatched mine through the hole, hurriedly piled books in a pyramid against it, and stopped my ears exclude the lamentable prayer. I seemed to keep them closed above a quarter of an hour. Yet, the instant I listened again, there was a doleful cry moaning on. "Be gone!" I shouted. "I'll never let you in, not if you beg for 20 years. "It is 20 years," moaned the voice. 20 years. I have been away for 20 years. Threat began, a feeble scratching outside, and the pile of books moved as if thirst forward. I tried to jump up, but could not stir a limb, and so yelled aloud in a frenzy of fright. To my confusion, I discovered the yell was not ideal. Hasty footsteps approached my chamber door. Somebody pushed it open. With a vigorous hand, and a light glimmered through the squares at the top of the bed. I sat shuddering yet, and wiping the perspiration from my head. The intruder appeared to hesitate and muttered to himself. At last he said, in a half whisper, plainly not expecting an answer, "Is there anyone here?" I considered it best to confess my presence, for if I knew Heathcliff's assents, and feared he might search further if I kept quiet. With this intention, I turned and opened the panels. I shall not soon forget the effect of my action produced. This paragraph, which I just read, serves as an example as to why Wuthering Heights forms a part of the Gothic genres of the novel also. Now let us have a look at the context of this paragraph. Lockwood has come to Wuthering Heights despite being uninvited for the dinner. He does feel unwelcomed there. Unfortunately, he has no option but to stay back at Wuthering Heights because of the snowstorm that is going on outside. As a result of which, Zilla takes Lockwood to a room in which Heathcliff does not allow anyone. While in the room, Lockwood spots three names: Catherine Earnshaw, Catherine Heathcliff, and Catherine Linton. In the room, Lockwood encounters Catherine's ghost. It is clear when it says, "I have been away for 20 years." This incident incites Lockwood to find about the history and mystery of Wuthering Heights. Delightful.
Delightful company, muttered Heathcliff. Take the candle and go where you please. I shall join you directly. Keep out of yard. Though the dogs are unchained and the house, Juno mounts sentinel there, and nay, you can only ramble about the steps and passages. But away with you! I'll come in 2 minutes. I obeyed, so far as to quit the chamber, when, ignorant where the narrow lobbies led, I stood still and was witness involuntarily to a piece of superstition on the part of my landlord, which belied orderly his apparent sense. He got on to the bed and wretched opened the lattice, bursting as he pulled at it into an uncontrollable passion of tears. Come in, he sobbed. Kathy, do come. Oh, do once more. Oh, my heart's darling. Hear me this time, Catherine, at last. The spectre showed a spectre's ordinary caprice. It gave no sign of being, but the snow and wind whirled wildly through, even reaching my station and blowing out the light. Now let's see the context of the lines I have just read. Lockwood is frightened to see the ghost of Catherine on the night of his stay in Wuthering Heights. When he has left the room, Heathcliff implores the ghost to come back to him.
Nellie, will you keep a secret of me? She pursued, kneeling down by me and lifting her winsome eyes to my face with that sort of look which turns off bad temper, even when one has all the right in the world to indulge it. Is it worth keeping? I inquired, less sulkily. Yes, and it worries me, and I must let it out. I want to know what I should do. Today, Edgar Linton has asked me to marry him, and I have given him an answer. Now, before I tell you whether it was a consent or denial, you tell me which it ought to have been. Really, Miss Catherine? How can I know? I replied, to be sure, considering the exhibition you performed in his presence this afternoon. I might say it would be wise to refuse him, since he asked you after that. You must either be hopelessly stupid or a venturesome fool. If you talk so, I won't tell you any more, she returned, peevishly rising to her feet. I accepted him, Nellie. Be quick and say whether I was wrong. You accepted him? Then what good is it discussing the matter? You have placed your word and cannot retract. But say whether I should have done so do, she exclaimed in an irritated tone, chafing her hands together and frowning. There are many things to be considered before that question can be answered properly, I said sententiously. First and foremost, do you love Mr. Edgar? Who can help it? Of course I do, she answered. Then I put her through the following catechism. For a girl of 22, it was not injurious. By no means. You must say why. Well, because he is handsome and pleasant to be with. Why do you love him, Miss Cathy? Nonsense. I do. That's sufficient. Bad was my commentary. And because he is young and cheerful, bad still. And because he loves me, indifferent coming there. And he will be rich, and I shall like to be the greatest woman of the neighborhood, and I shall be proud of having such a husband. Worst of all, And now, say how you love him, as everybody loves. You are silly, Nelly. Not at all answer. I love the ground under his feet, and the air over his head, and everything he touches, and every word he says. I love all his looks, and all his actions, and him entirely, and altogether. There's now, and why? Nay, you are making a jest of it. It is exceedingly ill natured. It's no jest to me, said the young lady, scowling and turning her face to the fire. I'm very far from jesting, Miss Catherine, I replied. You love Mr. Edgar because he is handsome and young and cheerful and rich and loves you. The last, however, goes for nothing. You would love him without that, and probably, and with it you wouldn't unless they possess the four former attractions. In this excerpt, there is a little conversation between Catherine and Nelly. Catherine feels her love for Heathcliff, and also she accepted Edgar's marriage proposal, but at the same time she was so confused to choosing between Heathcliff and Mr. Edgar. So she seeks some advice from Nelly, and here's the Nelly being a mouthpiece of Emily Bront, and shows us a picture of so-called Victorian society. And at the end of this conversation, we find there's only reason of marriage is money, status, and fame in society that are degrading the value of love, emotions, faith in the Victorian society and here in the Catherine's life.
This is nothing, she cried. I was only going to say that heaven did not seem to be my home, and I broke my heart with weeping to come back to earth. And the angels were so angry that they flung me out into the middle of the heath on the top of Wuthering Heights, where I woke sobbing for joy. That will do to explain my secret as well as the other. I have no more business to marry Edgar Linton than I have to be in heaven. And if the wigged man is there had not brought Heathcliff so low, I shouldn't have thought of it. It would degrade me to marry Heathcliff now, so he shall never know how I love him, and that not because he is handsome, Nelly, but because he is more myself than I am. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same, and Linton's is different, as a moonbeam from lightning or frost from fire. The passage which I read presently is one of the many beautiful passages present in Wuthering Heights. It is a continuation of the discussion between Nelly and Catherine, where Catherine explicitly and metaphorically compares her present state to a dream which she saw, in which she was being pushed out of heaven because she didn't belong there, like in the same way as she does not belong with Edgar. So we can say that this is one of the touching passage, and it has the power to move the reader in spite of himself. Just it has the power of sublimity.
He quite deserted? We separated? She exclaimed, with an accent of indignation. Who is to separate us, pray? They will meet the fate of Milo. Not as long as I live, Ellen. For no mortal creature. Every Linton on the face of the earth might melt into nothing before I could consent to forsake Heathcliff. Oh, that's not what I intend. That's not what I mean. I shouldn't be Mrs. Linton were such a price demanded. He will be as much to me as he has been all his lifetime. Edgar must shake off his antipathy and tolerate him at least. He will when he learns my true feelings towards him, Nelly. I see now you think me a selfish wretch. But did it never strike you that if Heathcliff and I married, we should be beggars? Whereas if I marry Linton, I can aid Heathcliff to rise and place him out of my brother's power. With your husband's money, Miss Catherine? I asked. You will find him not as pliable as you calculate upon, and though I am hardly a judge, I think that's the worst motive you have given yet for being the wife of young Linton. It is not, retorted she. It is the best. The others were the satisfaction of my whims, and for Edgar's sake, to satisfy him. This is for the sake of one who comprehends in his person my feelings to Edgar and myself. I cannot express it, but surely you and everybody have a notion that there is or should be an existence of yours beyond you. What were the use of my creation if I were entirely content here? My great miseries in this world have been Heathcliff's miseries, and I watched and felt each from the beginning. My great thought in living in is himself. If all else perished and he remained, I should still continue to be. And if all else remained and he were annihilated, the universe would turn to a mighty stranger. I should not seem a part of it. My love for Linton is like the foliage in the woods. Time will change it, I am well aware, as winter changes the trees. My love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath, a source of little visible delight, but necessary. Nelly, I am Heathcliff. He is always, always in my mind, not as a pleasure any more than I am always a pleasure to myself, but as my own being. So don't talk of our separation again. It is impracticable. And she paused and hid her face in the folds of my gown. But I jerked it forcibly away. I was out of patience with her folly. This excerpt was the part of Catherine's speech to Nellie about her acceptance of Edgar's proposal in chapter 9. It forms the turning point of the plot. It is at this point that Heathcliff leaves Wuthering Heights after he has overheard Catherine say that it would degrade her to marry him. Although the action of Wuthering Heights takes place so far from the bustle of society where most of Bronte's contemporaries set their scenes, social ambition motivates many of the actions of these characters. However isolated among the Moors, Catherine's decision to marry Edgar Linton out of a desire to be the greatest woman of the neighborhood exemplifies the effect of social considerations on the character's actions. In Catherine's paradoxical statement that Heathcliff is more myself than I am, readers can see how the relation between Catherine and Heathcliff often transcends a dynamic desire and becomes one of unity. Heterosexual love is often in literature described in terms of complementary opposites, like moonbeam and lightning or frost and fire, but the love between Catherine and Heathcliff opposes this convention. Catherine says not "I love Heathcliff," but "I am Heathcliff." In following the relationship through to its painful end, the novel ultimately may attest to the destructiveness of a level that denies difference.
Nelly, is that you? It was a deep voice and foreign in tone. Yet there was something in the manner of pronouncing my name which made it sounds familiar. I turned about to discover who spoke fearfully, for the doors were shut and I had seen nobody on approaching the steps. Something stirred in the porch, and moving nearer, I distinguished a tall man dressed in the dark clothes. With dark face and hair, he leaned against the side and held his fingers on the latch as if intending to open for himself. Who can it be, I thought? Mr. Earnshaw? Oh no, the voice has no resemblance to his. Go and carry my message, he interrupted impatiently. I am in hell till you do, said her. A person from Kimpton wishes to see you, ma'am. The gypsy, the ploughboy. Hush, you must not call him by those names, master, I said. She had been sadly grieved to hear you. She was nearly heartbroken when he ran off. I guess his return will make a jubilee to her. Catherine flew upstairs, breathless and wild, too excited to show gladness. Indeed, by her face, Oh, Edgar, Edgar, she panted, flinging her arms round his neck. Oh, Edgar, darling, Heathcliff comes back. He is. Well, cried her husband crossly. Don't strangle me for that. She said, I know you didn't like him. Yet, for my sake, you must be friends now. After meeting Heathcliff, she explained, I shall think it a dream tomorrow. She cried, I shall not be able to believe that I have seen and touched and spoken to you once more. And yet, cruel Heathcliff, you don't deserve this welcome. To be absent and silent for 3 years and never to think of me. He said, a little more than you have thought of me. He murmured, I heard of your marriage, Kathy, not long since, and while waiting in the yard below, I meditated this plan just to have one glimpse of your face, a stare of surprise, perhaps, and pretended pleasure. Afterwards, settle my score with Hindley, and then prevent the law by doing execution on myself. Your welcome has put these ideas out of my mind, but beware of meeting me with another aspect next time. Nay, you will not drive me off again. You were really sorry for me, were you? Well, there was cause. I have fought through a bitter life since I last heard your voice, and you must forgive me, for I struggle only for you. After some incidents when meeting with Heathcliff, Isabella falls in love with Heathcliff. And Catherine got an idea that Heathcliff plots his revenge by using her. So, Catherine angry on Isabella and said, You are an impertinent little monkey, exclaimed Mrs. Linton in surprise. But I will not believe this idiocy. It is impossible that you can covet the admiration of Heathcliff, that you consider him an agreeable person. I hope I have misunderstood you, Isabella. No, you have not, said the infatuated girl. I love him more than ever you loved Edgar, and he might love me. If you would let him, I wouldn't be you for a kingdom then, Catherine declared emphatically, and she seemed to speak sincerely. Nellie, help me to convince her of her madness. Tell her what Heathcliff is, an unreclaimed creature without refinement, without cultivation, an arid wilderness of firs and whinstone. I had as soon put that little canary into the park on a winter's day as recommend you to bestow your heart on him. It is deplorable ignorance of his character, child, and nothing else, which makes that dream into your head. Pray don't imagine that he conceals depths of benevolence and affection beneath a stem exterior. He is not a rough diamond, a pearl containing oyster of rustic. He is a fierce, pitiless, wolfish man. I never said to him, let this or that enemy alone, because it would be ungenerous or cruel to harm them, I say. Let them alone, because I should hate them to be wrong. And he had crushed you like a sparrow's egg, Isabella. If he found you a troublesome charge, I know he couldn't love a Linton. And yet he had been quite capable of marrying you, your fortune and expectations, arise in growing with him a besetting sin. There is my picture, and I am his friend, so much so that had he thought seriously to catch you, I should perhaps have held my tongue and let you fall into his trap. Isabella shouted. For shame, she repeated angrily. You are worse than 24s, you poisonous friend. Ah, you won't believe me then, said Catherine. Banish him from your thoughts, miss, I said. He is a bird of a bad omen, no mate for you. Mrs. Linton spoke strongly, and yet I can't contradict her. She's better acquainted with his hurt than I or anyone besides, and she never would represent him as worse than he is. Honest people don't hide their regrets. How has he been living? How has he got rich? Why is he staying at Wuthering Heights, the house of a man whom he adores? They say the people's Mr. Earnshaw is worse and worse since he came. These lines are from Wuthering Heights, chapter 10. At that time, Heathcliff returned after 3 years with adorable change to Thrushcross Grange, where Catherine, Edgar, and Isabella been living peacefully. Although Heathcliff appears to be a gentleman now, but still there is misery in his actions.
He neither spoke nor loosed his hold for some 5 minutes, during which period he bestowed more kisses than ever he gave in his life before. I dare say, but then my mistress had kissed him first, and I plainly saw that he could hardly bear, for downright agony, to look into her face. The same conviction had stricken him as me, from the instant he beheld her, that there was no prospect of ultimate recovery there. She was fated, sure to die. "Oh, Cathy! Oh, my life! How can I bear it?" was the first sentence he uttered, in a tone that did not seek to disguise his despair. And now he started at her so earnestly that I thought the very intensity of his gaze would bring tears into his eyes. But they burned with anguish, they did not melt. "What now?" said Catherine, leaning back and returning his look with a suddenly clouded brow. Her humour was a mere vein of constantly varying caprices. "You and Edgar have broken my heart, Heathcliff, and you both came to bewail the deed to me as if you were the people to be pitied. I shall not pity you, not I. You have killed me, and thriven on it, I think. How strong you are! How many years do you mean to live after I am gone?" Heathcliff had knelt on one knee to embrace her. He attempted to rise, but she seized his hair and kept him down. "I wish I could hold you," she continued bitterly, "till we were both dead. I shouldn't care what you suffered. I care nothing for your sufferings. Why shouldn't you suffer? I do. Will you forget me? Will you be happy when I am in the earth? Will you say 20 years hence that that's the grave of Catherine Earnshaw? I loved her long ago, and was wretched to lose her. But it is past. I have loved many others since. My children are dearer to me than she was, and at death I shall not rejoice that I am going to her. I shall be sorry that I must leave them. Will you say so, Heathcliff? Don't torture me till I am as mad as yourself," cried he, wrenching his head free and grinding his teeth. The two, to a cool spectator, made a strange and fearful picture. Well might Catherine deem that heaven would be a land of exile to her, unless with her mortal body she cast away her mortal character also. Her present countenance had a wild vindictiveness in its white cheek and bloodless lip and scintillating eye, and she retained in her closed fingers the portion of the locks she had been grasping. As to her companion, While rising himself with one hand, he had taken her arm with the other, and so inadequate was his stock of gentleness to the requirements of her condition that on this letting go I saw four distinct impressions left blue in the colorless skin. Are you possessed with a devil? He pursued savagely. To talk in that manner to me when you are dying? You reflect that all those words will be branded on my memory and eating deeper eternally after you have left me? You know you lie to say I have killed you. And Catherine, you know that I could as soon forget you as my existence. Is it not sufficient for your infernal selfishness that while you are at peace, I shall wreathe in the torments of hell? I shall not be at peace, moaned Catherine, recalled to a sense of physical weakness by the violent, unequal throbbing of her heart, which beat visibly and audibly under his excess of agitation. She said nothing further till the paroxysm was over. Then she continued more kindly. I am not wishing you greater torment than I have, Heathcliff. I only wish us never to be parted, and should a word of mine distress you hereafter, think I feel the same distress underground, and for my own sake, forgive me. Come here and kneel down again. You never harmed me in your life. Nay, if you nurse anger, that will be worse to remember than my harsh words. Won't you come here again? Do. Heathcliff went to the back of her chair and leaned over, but not so far as to let her see his face, which was livid with emotion. She bent round to look at him. He would not permit it. Turning abruptly, he walked to the fireplace, where he stood, silent, with his back towards us. Mrs. Linton's glance followed him suspiciously. Every moment awoke a new sentiment in her. After a pause and prolonged gaze, she resumed, addressing me in accent of indignant disappointment. Oh, you see, Nelly, he would not relent a moment to keep me out of the grave. That is how I am loved. Well, never mind. That is not my Heathcliff. I shall love mine yet, and take him with me. He is in my soul. And, added she musingly, the thing that irks me most is this shattered prison after all. I'm tired of being enclosed here. I am wearying to escape into that glorious world, and to be always there, not seeing it dimly through tears and yearning for it through the walls of an aching heart, but really with it and in it. Nelly, you think you are better and more fortunate than I, in full health and strength. You are sorry for me. Very soon that will be altered. I shall be sorry for you. I shall be incomparably beyond and above you all. I wonder he won't be near me. She went on to herself. I thought he wished it. Heathcliff dear, you should not be sullen now. Do come to me, Heathcliff. In her eagerness, she rose and supported herself on the arm of the chair. At that earnest appeal he turned to her, looking absolutely desperate. His eyes, wide and wet, at last flashed fiercely on her. His breast heaved convulsively. An instant they held asunder, and then how they met I hardly saw. But Catherine made a spring, and he caught her, and they were locked in an embrace from which I thought my mistress would never be released alive. In fact, to my eyes, she seemed directly insensible. He flung himself into the nearest seat, and on my approaching hurriedly to ascertain if she had fainted, he gnashed at me and foamed like a mad dog, and gathered her to him with greedy jealousy. I did not feel as if I were in the company of a creature of my own species. It appeared that he would not understand, though I spoke to him. So I stood off, and held my tongue in great perplexity. A movement of Catherine's relieved me a little presently. She put up her hands to clasp his neck, and bring her cheek to his as he held her, while he in return, covering with frantic caresses, said wildly, you teach me how cruel you have been.
cruel and false. Why did you despise me? Why did you betray your own heart, Kathy? I have not one word of comfort. You deserve this. You have killed yourself. Yes, you may kiss me and cry and wring out my kisses and tears. They'll belight you. They'll damn you. You loved me. Then what right had you to leave me? What right? Answer me. The poor fancy you felt for Linton? Because misery and degradation and death and nothing that God or Satan could inflict would have parted us. You, of your own will, did it. I have not broken your heart. You have broken it. And in breaking it, you have broken mine. So much the worse for me that I'm strong. Do I want to live? What kind of living will it be when you, oh God, would you like to leave with your soul in the grave? Let me alone. Let me alone, sobbed Catherine. If I have done wrong, I'm dying for it. It is enough. You left me too, but I won't upbraid you. I forgive you. Forgive me. It is hard to forgive and to look at those eyes and feel those wasted hands, he answered. Kiss me again and don't let me see those eyes. I forgive what you have done to me. I love my murderer. But yours? How can I? They were silent, their faces hid against each other and washed by each other's tears. At least, I suppose the weeping was on both sides, as it seemed Heathcliff could weep on a great occasion like this. The context of the lines I've just read is that Catherine is counting her last breaths. Heathcliff and Catherine are finally united to share their last moments together. These moments are full of confessions, allegations, and reconciliation from both the sides. All the boundaries between them rumbles down in those magical moments. And I guess this is the magic, this feeling is the magic of reading a classic.
This brings us to the end of today's session. We really hope you enjoyed the reading of Wuthering Heights, and we'll be back next Sunday with another classic. In case you want to join and read alive, do join Test Reading Club on Telegram, and you may also leave a message below, and we'll be too glad to add you. Any suggestions are welcome. Please drop them in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe and press the bell icon. Bye bye, everyone. See you